when people look at the lay of the land, who's going to be trying to upgrade at the quarterback position, where the landing spots could be for Aaron Rodgers, don't waste your time penciling in the word Raiders. Why would he want to play for the Raiders? All due respect to the Raiders, but as of right now, I think an objective assessment of the Raiders organization would be we're a solid 4th out of 4 in the AFC West. You got 3 playoff teams. You got the Chiefs, who are the perennial AFC finalists. They could have banners up the wazoo if they had the inclination like the Colts did to hang a banner every single time they're in the AFC Championship. They've been to the Super Bowl 5 times. They've won 3. The Chargers are on the rise. The Broncos are on the rise. Where are the Raiders, especially without a high-end quarterback? They have 2 foundational pieces in Brock Bowers and Max Crosby, but why would you want to go to the Raiders if you want to win? And Rodgers told TMZ recently, it all comes down to who wants him and are they good? Now, you could twist yourself into a mental pretzel to call any team good. I mean, any team in the NFL is in theory in possession of a chance to have everything work out. And if Aaron Rodgers is still Aaron Rodgers, that makes a difference. A bad team becomes a good team. Just add Rodgers. I think he's going to be aiming higher. I think he's going to want to avoid having another bad stop to go along with the last 2 years with the Jets. 4 snaps, 5 wins, the fewest wins of his career as a full season starter. He doesn't want to have another bad season like that. He doesn't want to go out that way. At some point, it sticks to him. He's going to want to rectify what happened. Remember, I believed all along he didn't want to go back to the Jets, and he wanted the Jets to be the ones who pulled the plug so he can use that as motivation. So there will be a dotted line comparison, maybe a straight line comparison all year long. What the Jets do with whoever their new quarterback is, what Rodgers does with whoever his new team is. And that will be a competition. If he stays in the AFC, do the Jets make the playoffs? Does Rodgers' new team make the playoffs? NFC, it's going to be a little more tenuous. It's easier to make the comparisons if Rodgers stays put in that conference. Here are the teams that I think could be in play for Rodgers. And some are looking for starters. Some might be looking for backups, like the Dolphins. Rodney Harrison and I talked about this last week. Would the Dolphins not make sense with Rodgers as the available backup to Tua Tagovailoa, who has been injury prone? I don't know that Rodgers would want to go in as number 2, but when you look at the history of the quarterback position in Miami, recent history, there's going to be an opportunity to play. I think it's better for Rodgers to wait and see if and when an injury happens to Tua Tagovailoa. The problem, though, is if you wait and they have their QB2 in place, then you get into the question of whether or not we go next man up or we bring in a guy who hasn't been here. We bring in a guy who we don't know and we don't know him, and we throw that dynamic on top of everything else. It's almost better to go there, be there, and then just wait and see what happens. The problem is it would be a major distraction. There'd be questions about whether or not Aaron Rodgers is actually better than Tua. There would be a sense that Rodgers has picked a spot where he thinks there's a chance the starter is going to get injured, so he's secretly rooting for the starter to get injured. I don't think it's in Miami's interest. I think it's a place to watch in the event that Tua Tagovailoa gets hurt, and there are plenty of opportunities to get injured short of the actual start of the regular season. It's just a team to watch, especially given the recent history of the quarterback position. The Steelers are the ones that have always made sense. Do they want him? That's the question. Deshaun Elliott has come around. He's the guy who put on social media a week or so ago, keep his ass in the retirement home, or words to that effect. Next thing you know, there's a picture on social media of Deshaun Elliott with Aaron Rodgers, and Deshaun Elliott's on board. Now, it's possible that they had a throwing session that day, and it's possible that Aaron Rodgers lit up Deshaun Elliott. Nothing convinces a guy that someone's old ass shouldn't be at the retirement home than seeing that guy cook. I don't know for a fact that that happened. It's possible that that's what made Deshaun Elliott come around. Doesn't mean that Mike Tomlin, Art Rooney, Omar Khan are going to come around and say, let's bring Rodgers to Pittsburgh. But the Steelers are the ones that make sense from Rodgers' standpoint. The Browns are going to be looking for a quarterback. Are they good enough to attract Rodgers? They're already repelling Myles Garrett. Like if Rodgers is looking for objective indications that the Browns are a contender, their top defensive player, first overall pick in the 2017 draft, wants out. He's agitating for a trade. I think it becomes harder for Rodgers to make the case to himself that the Browns are contenders. The Giants are looking for a quarterback. Hey, he wouldn't have to move. Wouldn't have to move. And there's been some, maybe. No. I think they are still too many players away for Rodgers to think he's going to be able to compete with the Cowboys, the Commanders, and the Eagles in the NFC East. The Vikings get mentioned from time to time, and I might have to cover hockey if that would happen, or just walk away if he'd end up in Minnesota. J.J. McCarthy is the guy who I think they're going to go with. Would they want to keep him on the bench for another year and take a shot with Rodgers? Would they bench Rodgers if it's not working out? See, that's the problem. If you bring Rodgers in and you have somebody who is being groomed to take over eventually, you reach the potential for that awkward moment during the season where the team needs a kick in the ass. Rodgers is showing greater signs of age and wear and tear. And what do you do at that point? Do you bench him? Do you cut him? I remember when the Vikings had Donovan McNabb, traded with Washington for him in 2011. They had drafted Christian Ponder. During the season, they decided to pivot to Ponder. They just cut McNabb. You can't keep him around. You can't keep the veteran around when you put him on the bench. So I don't know that it's in the Vikings' best interest. I know plenty of people are rooting for the next step in the Brett Favre career arc. It's 2 for 2 so far. It could go 3 for 3. Now there's a few other steps that maybe Rodgers will want to try to avoid, allegedly or otherwise. But the Vikings would be the next play to keep the Brett Favre comparisons intact. I don't think it's a good idea for the Vikings, but ultimately they're the ones who are going to make the decisions. And when you look at what Kevin O'Connell did with a guy who failed during his years with the Jets, I don't know. maybe he's the guy that can get the absolute most out of what Aaron Rodgers has left. I still think Rodgers can play at a high level. He needs to stop trying to run away from pressure and just get rid of the ball. He needs to play like he did the year that he had a bad calf and he just stays in the pocket and fires away. And when the walls close in, he needs to get rid of the ball. Don't take the hits and don't do something that might pop another Achilles tendon or the first one again. The Saints, if they don't keep Derek Carr, it looks like they want to, but who knows what's going to happen there. The Seahawks, if they would decide to move on from Geno Smith, but they're saying all the right things that would suggest they want to continue indefinitely with Geno Smith. And then there's the Rams. We talked about that the other day. Makes sense from Rodgers' perspective, makes no sense from the Rams' perspective. To go 4 years older than Matthew Stafford, who's currently playing at a higher level than Aaron Rodgers. Why would you do that if you're the Rams? It's easy to see why you do it if you were Rodgers. It's a good team that made it to the Final 8. They're the one team that gave the Eagles a tough game in the postseason. He'd be close to where he lives now. It would make a ton of sense for Rodgers. It would make zero sense for the Rams. So from my perspective, I didn't mention the Titans. I still look at the presence of Chad Brinker, who was in Green Bay in the front office for 13 years. And we always assume that because two people worked together in the past, they'll want to find a way to work together in the future. There's a chance that Chad Brinker has seen enough and heard enough and experienced enough with Aaron Rodgers that no thank you. And there's a chance that Rodgers knows enough about Brinker that his attitude is he's no different than the other people in the front office I didn't like. Remember the report from Charles Robinson that Rodgers wanted to get Brian Gutekunst, the GM, fired, and he had the press conference Rodgers did starting training camp, I think 2021, where he just went scorched earth about the attitude, the dismissiveness, the condescension from the front office toward the players. You just work here. You just play here. We don't care if you got 15 years of experience. We're going to make the decisions about who the players are. That was off-putting to Aaron Rodgers. And if he identifies Brinker with that front office mentality that he battled with in Green Bay, he won't want to go to Tennessee, and Brinker might not want him. Or they love each other. And you look at Tennessee, you look at the division they're in, maybe they're not far away from contending. But I think the Steelers make the most sense. Maybe the Titans. I don't think there's any other obvious seat, and I don't think there's any other obvious contender or even arguable contender. And that might make Aaron Rodgers just decide to move on. Or, as I've suggested in the past, and this relates to the Dolphins, wait to see if a starting quarterback suffers a season-ending injury with another team, with a team that is a shortlist Super Bowl contender. In 2023, we saw plenty of injuries, starting with Rodgers, 4 snaps into the season. In 2024, we didn't. So, to be determined. But there really hasn't been a lot of clear reporting that there's a team out there that's waiting to pounce on Aaron Rodgers once the Jets cut him on the first day of the league year.
Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.